Hello, hello. Um, Welcome to another little impromptu chat. My guest today is Holly Lawford Smith, an academic and feminist, an academic at the University of Melbourne, who has popped in to give us a little bit of an update on how things are going in Australia, especially in regards to Katherine Deves' campaign, which has seen an incredible harassment. Which has seen a kind of equal harassment campaign that started up against her. I'm knackered because I have a terrible bed. My race car bed is very uncomfortable, so I I don't I don't I hope I don't make a fool of myself in this one, Holly. Holly, lovely to see you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. Excuse me if I'm a little bit bleary-eyed and not very clear. I'm suffering at the moment from a terribly uncomfortable bed.
I'll just rant at you, and you can just do the facial expressions.
Thank you. Yes, that would be great. That would be great. I'll put on those glasses with the thing on.
The mask.
Yeah. So, Holly, obviously, Katherine Deves' campaign has gone from, well, it started off with a few of what we usually see, which is really extreme attacks on her. She seemed to be isolated, and the usual suspects were calling her a bigot and calling her insane and all this sort of stuff. But it seems to me from, it's hard for me to be across everything, but from just kind of a floating kind of observation of the situation, am I right in thinking that Katherine's kind of peaking a bit of Australia? Is that going on?
I think that's right. I think she's certainly succeeded in bringing this whole tranche of issues into the Australian consciousness. She's sort of widely reported as being like the best known candidate in Australia at the moment, which I think must be true. And like for anyone that wants to follow along this discussion, I would highly recommend just putting her name into Google and clicking on the news results, because it's literally just, it gives you a really good sense. It's pages and pages and pages. I did it just before. Page 6, it's still one-day-old news.
Wow.
It's really widely reported. So she's certainly raised the profile of the set of issues that we would think of as gender critical, but she is also just under enormous pressure and sort of being relentlessly attacked by the usual suspects.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's having a pretty rough time.
What kind of tactics have been used against her?
Well, so I wanted to tell you a bit about the most recent thing. Do we presume your viewers will know who she is, or should I just quickly sort of say?
Oh no, that's a good point. A lot of them will, but just in case, it might be nice to have a quick refresher. Thank you, Holly.
Because I know we spoke, the three of us spoke maybe a year ago or so, but yeah, she's basically the co-founder of Save Women's Sports, which is the founder for Save Women's Sports Australasia, but co-founder sort of teaming up with the New Zealand group. She's a trained lawyer. She's a mum. She's a feminist. She's gorgeous, which I think is relevant to her celebrity at the moment, because the papers seem to really enjoy, putting a very glamorous picture of her from Twitter together with her and then she said this stuff about.
That's a good combo. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think she's a appealing combination of traits for the media.
And how has their message? Continue. You were going to tell us about the latest thing that's been done.
Well, right. So basically, she was an outspoken campaigner on the Save Women's Sport type issue. And then fairly recently, she decided to run for the Liberal Party. And now I was trying to think of what the best way to put this would be for the UK audience. I think it would be if Emma Hilton decided to run for the Tories.
Okay. For the Tories. Wow. Okay.
Like equally glamorous, equally sort of in the single issue, right? Like really standing up on sport and being knowledgeable and outspoken about sport.
Yeah.
And then I say Tories, of course, you have to remember that the whole Australian system is really dragged to the left. So it's like our Liberals are the Conservatives, but they're still far left of your Tories, but they are our Conservatives, right? So,
okay, I think I got that. And what time is it there? Oh no, you're actually in Scotland, aren't you? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that's my, like, I think that's the sort of a thing to imagine, right? Like if a person who had been that outspoken, like Emma has been, or maybe Nick Williams or someone like that, who's really squarely on the sport issue, suddenly had to pivot to being an ordinary politician that represents all issues for a community, right? And once she became the candidate, she sort of had to then get across, what do the people of Warringah, which is a part of Sydney, care about and want me to represent them on? So there was all this, there's just been these absolutely ludicrous accusations that can be perfectly reasonably explained by the fact that she's transitioning from a sort of single issue campaign to being a general multi-purpose politician, right? So this accusation that she deleted her Twitter because she knew she'd been offensive, and of course she didn't. She deleted her Twitter, I presume, because she now has to represent her constituency on a broad range of issues, not her own personal opinions about women's sport.
Yeah. No, it's and also we all know that the way that trans rights activists behave is that they mine things. An Irish politician. Let me just remind myself of his name. His name is Mick Barry. Published a completely dishonest kind of tweet about Stella O'Malley, a recent thing that Stella O'Malley did. She actually said something along the lines of, you don't have to care for trans people, but I do, because it's my job, and it's, I'm going to stand up for these people. And this pig, Mick, I keep forgetting his name. It's one of those names that just jumps out of my head. Mick Barry. This pig, Mick Barry, said, just got the bit that said, you don't have to care about trans people,
That's so disingenuous.
Yeah, but it's par for the course, as we know. What kind of attacks has she come under then?
Right, so I wanted to tell you about the most recent thing, which was just, incredible. So she had made, basically people had dug through her tweet archive, and this was the original thing. She had been sort of found to have used the word mutilated to refer to trans surgeries. That's fine. That's sort of all in the past at the start of the pylons. But I think it was yesterday. I'm slightly confused by the time zones as well. But yesterday or the day before Australia, on the campaign trail, a reporter for Sky News managed to track her down, and she's been doing very minimal media, which I don't know why, but I suspect maybe she's been asked not to. And some other commentators have said the same thing. They think maybe the Liberal Party doesn't want her.
That's a shame, because it sounds like people are, because as I say, I've just noticed a lot of kind of, not quite as aggressive or one-sided reporting on her, and a lot of Australian tweeters speaking up.
Exactly. And like there are certain forums like the Sydney Morning Herald that have actually been quite fair. So I think people are interested to discuss the issues and hear from her. Anyway, so this reporter finally did manage to get a face-to-face with her, and he asked her particularly about her apology for using the language of mutilation, and she sort of walked it back. So she said, that language is accurate. What I apologize for is the fact that it is confronting ugly language, and so people will be offended by it, but it's accurate.
That's great. Good for her.
Great. Good for, really, like, yes, it has felt like she hasn't really been able to speak her mind, and like she finally did. But then, of course, that has hit the headlines. So then what happened today, again, that same person did a kind of weird debunking, which is strange because he's normally very much on her side. But he was like, oh, she says in the interview that the language of mutilation is in the New South Wales Crimes Act, but I looked it up and it's only actually used in reference to FGM, not to trans. So he's sort of calling her out on being wrong on that, even though she said it was both in the Crimes Act and in medical negligence cases, which she would know because she's trained as a lawyer, right? So I don't know what that moment was about. But anyway, because she did that, and because it was widely reported that she had walked back her comments, there's now there was then a press conference with Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, where the journalists were then attacking him about whether he still stands by Kath. And so this amazing opportunity happened where Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, talked about how we need caution in our treatment of surgeries for trans children, adolescents.
Right. Yes. Wonderful.
So if I stop the story there, then we're all really happy, right? Because wow, Australia's Prime Minister finally saying this really sensible stuff and standing by Kath. But then, and I don't know who it was, some dickhead female journalist says that's absolutely false. In Australia, there are no surgeries for under 18s. And because she cites the source as being one of his government websites, he concedes the point. Instead of saying, no, absolutely, there have been surgeries on under 18s. So
Right.
the sort of final bit in the story is that Bernard Lane then did a really great, that's the journalist who's been looking into this issue the most for us here.
Yes.
He did a tweet thread just kind of providing the evidence on what trans surgeries have in fact been happening in Australia. And indeed, the youngest person to get top surgery that he knows about was 15.
Yeah.
So it's really unfortunate that this opportunity happened where it could have become more of a conversation about what's happening with trans kids, but this misinformed reporter corrected the Prime Minister. He didn't know enough to stand his ground. And now multiple media outlets are publishing the headlines, Deves and Morrison wrong about trans children.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess that, like, it's only a matter of time. We've got the CAS report coming out over here.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious right up until the release of the report. The interim report's already been out, but you still have these clueless politicians like Ed Miliband, who once wanted to be our Prime Minister, the UK's Prime Minister, holding up a sign that says they want a trans-inclusive conversion therapy bill, which means, of course, that they want to or they want to conversion therapy gay kids,
Yeah.
So it's just extraordinary the way the politicians don't seem to be across this at all. The only ones recently who have been is the Conservatives. They've been dealing with it great over here. When things are put to them, you can tell they've heard you can tell they've been coached in how to respond to these, and they're doing great. They're getting really good advice. So what is the problem with like, does he need her to come in and speak to him and tell and warn him about what he's going to be facing?
I mean, maybe. I don't really know how it works. I would have thought he would have been fully briefed, given that her interest in the topic has shot the prominence of the issue up in the election. But I guess he has a lot, I mean, being charitable, I guess he just has a lot of issues he's expected to be across on the spot in a press conference, right? And then maybe that's just not one where maybe he thinks, well, the numbers are small. Yes. But in fact, he would really need to be across it now just because of the fact that that's a significant part of the national conversation at the moment. So, yeah, it's kind of a shame.
Isn't it the case at the moment that if you try to do watchful waiting with a so-called trans child, that you could actually receive a criminal sentence in Australia?
It's state by state. So in Victoria, that it's true, although you have to get a criminal sentence, a fine or jail time. The child would have to be able to prove injury, and that's some substantial bar to prove. But if they could, and that can be psychological injury. If they could prove that in a court, that your denial of their identity caused them the sort of substantial trauma, then and it's a substantial amount of jail time or a fine. And Tasmania is looking to be going the same way. So I think there will eventually be several states of Australia that have the version of the conversion therapy, a much stupider version than you have here. Like, I was really surprised when I read through the what do you call it? Now I'm forgetting the words, but the consultation website.
Yeah. Okay.
That was sort of saying what the plans are before the bill is released. And I just thought, because it's really like, what was the thing that was good about it? That it was allowed for adults of sound mind, I think, which is a huge difference with ours, because ours is like, you're just not allowed to do it. Even like fully rational, competent, non-vulnerable 40-year-old gay man who wants to choose his faith over his sexual orientation could not rely on a third party to help him suppress his sexual urges, because that third party would then be at risk of criminal prosecution if he decided later on to say that he had been converted by them.
Right.
So ours is just so much more paternalistic than the UK's. Like, I think the UK is kind of getting a lot of things right.
Well, it's criminalizing therapy, isn't it? That's essentially what it's doing. It's criminalizing therapy
and faith, like and prayer and talking. It's really nuts.
There was an interesting incident that I knew was coming, where a Muslim woman asked a question. I think it was to, actually, maybe someone could help me in the comments. I forget who she asked it to. It was something in Wales. Someone will help me in a sec. They're all very nice in these comments. And they blocked her. You know, I mean, she was saying something like, what would you say to me as a Muslim woman? You know, I do not necessarily, you know, I can't remember exactly what she said, but she said, she basically said, these go against Muslim teachings, and I'm Muslim, and I find them offensive, or I think they'll be unworkable. And they blocked her, you know? It was something, I'll tell you what it was. It was some kind of ovarian charity. So I'm pretty sure that's who it was. And it's just extraordinary the way these organizations have been primed to do this. I mean, I'm sure there's good people working at all of them, but sometimes it really hits me how many crazy people have been kind of implanted in all these different organizations.
Well, implanted makes it sound like a conspiracy, right? Whereas I think it's actually just like a lot of, what is it? Not critical enough, not reflective enough, earnest do-gooder types,
yes.
Right? And somehow that still has the destruction of a conspiracy, right? So the effects are much the same.
I always thought it was kind of naturally arising conspiracy, almost like a not. Do conspiracies have to have leaders? Can they just be a bunch of people all agreeing at the same time to be very stupid?
No, I think conspiracy has a pretty strong implication of organization, but there is like the invisible hand, like things that look like if you just saw them, you would think that must have been designed, that still kind of emerge spontaneously. So
yes. And one good example is that reporter you were talking about, who knew these people, they don't know whether they're right or not, but she knew that it was important to immediately discount it as untrue.
Yes.
You know, because like that's they're all primed to do that. Anytime you talk about underage surgeries, and you can bring up Keira Bell and people like that until the cows come home, and they simply just will not accept that these people exist. It's the strangest thing, isn't it?
It is. I was actually I was just sort of trying to consume as much of the Katherine Deves news as possible before we talked, and there was this remarkable article that basically in two breaths of quotes. I mean, I'm sure that's not how the interview actually went, but the first one was like, quoting this, I've literally never heard of surgery on an under 18. Next quote, at least in the article, of course, there are a few rare cases of surgery on. And then, so
wow.
I mean, I wonder if the editor just did that on purpose to make the person look disingenuous, because it's insane otherwise that you wouldn't realize that the inconsistency.
The Guardian had a good one the other day. They had a fully bearded pedophile who's been arrested. He looked like, what did he look like? He looked like William Dafoe in that film about the lighthouse. He had a beard like this big, like one that you get a feeling he's not doing much kind of work on. And there's a photograph of him in a kind of in the police, wherever it was. And they say something like Wilson, who identified as a man at the time of arrest. It's like, well done, you spotted that he's a man. This is the Guardian reporting it, and they deliberately in the piece they tried to do everything to avoid using pronouns. It was the funniest thing, But
I think it's kind of subversive. Like, I really enjoy it when I see a woke media source doing everything they're supposed to do with words, but then putting a photo that just like tells the truth. Like, I wonder if that's all they can do sometimes within their guidelines, but they're at least doing what they can.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, but those guidelines, I mean, it's hard to know where to start with those guidelines, because the guidelines come from things like the judicial bench book, and so when in a courtroom a defendant has to be referred to by female pronouns, apparently the journalists just have to go along with it. So it's the most incredible kind of the capture at various different levels is it as kind of entrenched in Australia as it is here?
Yeah, I think it is. I can't remember the details. There's one case in particular that but I'm probably going to fudge the details without looking it up precisely. There was definitely guidance where it was something like, you're not to report the fact that the criminal is trans, because that feeds into the marginalization of the group. And you can see where the reasoning is coming from, right? It's like, you don't need to say that, guys. I think one of our gang stereotypes in Melbourne is these Sudanese immigrants. So it's like, you don't need to say that guy is Sudanese when he does some crime, but it's just feeding into these racist stereotypes. So they ran the same line for trans, which is like, okay, if you don't think at all and you just think, yeah, it's another minority group, so the same rules apply. But in this case, it was somehow highly relevant that the person was male. I can't remember what the crime was.
It's usually pedophilia or sexual abuse of some sort.
Yeah, it was something where it was relevant that they were male, and the reporter just seemed to have used trans as a way to communicate that. So they were sort of saying she and blah, blah, but then also saying a trans woman. And then, of course, yeah, they got dragged up by the press council for saying that the person was trans, which violates, but it's like, but it's the maleness, like it's a hat tip to the maleness.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's stuff like that that's definitely really tripping journalists up.
Oh, really? That's kind of making people wake up, is it?
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, in terms of how it's perceived,
sorry.
I don't
I didn't know what you said there. Sorry, I didn't get the end of your sentence. I thought you were saying that it's piquing people over there.
Oh, no, I mean, I wish, but I think it's just that journalists are, what's that called, like hamstrung, like sort of tied up in how much they're able to say. Yeah. Which, yeah.
Well, we say it's not a conspiracy, but if a bunch of criminals had got together and said to each other, how can we make sure that any reporting on us is as confusing as it possibly can be? They couldn't have come up with something better.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know. I guess I have this impulse to always try to be like, oh, where did that come from? And like, what would the person have been thinking if they were just trying to be nice to try to understand it? So I can sort of get myself in the headspace of like, a lot of people just think trans is like this third group outside of sex, right? And once you take on that silly view, okay, we don't want to marginalize the trans community that have nothing to do with sex and just other separate third group. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So you have to sort of be gender critical already to think, no, there is no outside, okay, or sensible, right? But then to think there is no outside of sex, there's just males and females. And we know what we know about male violence and male crime statistics, and we're not making any excuses for trans women when it comes to those. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, how is have you been in touch with Katherine since she started the campaign?
Sporadically, but because I'm traveling at the moment, I'm sort of useless.
Have you any idea of how she's doing? If she's getting through it all?
I think she's okay. I think it's been like really difficult. I mean, there was a point where she had to send her family away. She's got permanent security, I think, living in her house, and then attending with her wherever she goes. And she's, I think, dealing with an awful lot of personal pressure. But she's also a pretty resilient, strong person. I hope, however this works out, I think she'll be fine. I think either from what I've read, the projections are that it's sort of unlikely that she would win the seat from the independent, who's the incumbent. But I think, however it goes, it'll be great for her, because either she becomes a politician and then she has this great platform, or she's now a celebrity in Australia who gets to go back to campaigning on women's sport and probably has a million opportunities on the basis of her prominence, right? So I think either way, she's going to be great. I hope.
Good. That's really good to hear. That's really good to hear. One of the things you do hope about this is that it just, it's a historical moment, and people can get chewed up in the gears of it, So I'm glad that she's kind of dealing with it.
Yeah.
Although, just tell her she's not to fall in love with one of her minders. That never ends well.
Well, I think she actually fired one of her minders. So
oh, really?
I'm not sure where I heard that, but I'm somehow confident of it. So I think maybe it went the other way than that.
Okay.
I don't know if we can do practical tips or whatever, but I think she probably would appreciate the support. She's part of a international community of people trying to speak up on these topics, and just any sort of show of support on any platform, I think, would be enormously appreciated. It's 2 weeks until the election, and then we'll kind of know what's happened. So people.
Yeah, let's try people and keep Katherine's name out there. I mean, it's kind of a weird situation because the time thing is so screwed up for us that news is all higgledy-piggledy and stuff like that, and it's kind of hard for people to catch up. But I hope that people will, do occasional searches on Katherine's name and write the occasional supportive tweet. It does all help. And yeah, I mean, maybe she'll win. Who knows? It would be great.
Yeah,
absolutely great. Holly, absolutely lovely to talk to you as always. Is there anything else before we go that you want people to keep an eye out for? What are you doing in Scotland, first of all?
Mostly visiting my godchild, and then doing a little bit of stuff around my book. Is getting published tomorrow, so I kind of wanted to be in the country for.
Oh, great! Plug your book. What's it called?
It's just called Gender Critical Feminism, and I think I've seen a few tweets with photos of it, so I think some people have. It's been delivered like the day before or something, which is exciting. So we had a secret book launch last week, and I've just done a few other things around that.
Gender Critical Feminism. What's it about? No, I'm joking. Well, listen, Holly, I may even pop up to Edinburgh because there's a direct flight to Norwich, and it would be lovely to see you in the flesh and get some food and have a chat in person. So I'm going to see what things are like this weekend. When did you say you were going home?
Early Monday, so not much.
Perfect. Yeah. Do you have any plans?
Some plans on Saturday, but let's talk. Would be nice if we could make that work.
Okay, great. Let's try and do it. All right, Holly, lovely to see you, and good luck with the book.
Thank you.
That's a Father Ted line. People will recognize. Some people will recognize it. All right, see everyone. Thanks very much for the comments. I didn't get to any questions, but I have to head off and bring the boy home. So see you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.